We're talking about career-connected learning. We're talking about the utopia of Gen Z career exploration. I'm Tom Vander from Getting Smart. I sometimes like to start with questions rather than waiting to the end. So when you think about the utopia of career exploration, as you think about a whole sequence, starting maybe in elementary school, what would the utopia of career exploration look like? Eric, what do you think? What would the utopia of career exploration look like?
Kids would be out in the workforce doing their learning.
Starting early. Ryan, you don't get to hold it.
No. Students follow their passions.
Love it. Adam, what's the career exploration utopia?
Personalized blueprint built by each kid.
Love it. Stephanie, you know I'm coming. What's the career exploration utopia?
Everybody learning durable skills.
Let Lisa talk. I've already talked at this conference. Let her.
Oh, yeah, Allison's got one.
Allison's got one.
We need a CAPS comment. What? Oh, you are CAPS. We love CAPS.
We're taking time to hear from the students as often as we are hearing from the educators.
That's beautiful. Industries involved early on. What's it look like? Career exploration utopia.
It looks like historically marginalized students have access to social capital that has been denied.
I love it. And they're doing it in Indiana. Anything you want to add to that, Scott?
She said it.
That's awesome. What's career exploration utopia look like?
Youth apprenticeships.
I love it. When does that start?
As early as 16.
Beautiful. What career exploration utopia?
If I were in kindergarten, I'd love them to draw what they want to do every week.
That's awesome. That sounds like Adam. Lynn, what's it look like in North Carolina?
Real world problem solving.
I love it. Starting early, right? All right, one more? Yes. I trust you. I'm going to let you hold it.
Ooh, it would be flexible so that when a kid wants to be a firefighter, when they're a kindergartner, they still get to change their mind later if they want to change their mind.
Oh, that's super awesome. Dave, Project Lead the Way. What do you think about? Where does this start? Start with Project Lead the Way or even sooner?
It doesn't have to be Project Lead. It starts with students having access to a lifetime of opportunity regardless of their zip code.
Ooh, that's beautiful. All right, we have an amazing panel to describe not only what's happening in 2 states and a network and a district, but we'll invite them to each sort of peer into the future of what their version of utopia looks like. From that selfie a minute ago, it looks like we got Indiana in the house, right? I love how you guys show up for conferences in San Diego, right? Like when there's a conference in San Diego, Indiana's in the house. So has spring come to Indiana yet? Is it really? Dr. Kitty Jenner is, she's just one of America's best state chiefs. I just love watching the work that you do from a distance. They have this beautiful blueprint called Indiana GPS that she'll tell you about. But Dr. Jenner, when you think about career-connected learning and career exploration, what's it look like in Indiana today, and maybe a minute on where you're headed?
Sure, absolutely. Well, it's an honor to be here with you today. There are so many friends from Indiana and other states who I deeply respect and learn from, and so thank you. None of what we're going to talk about today is possible without a team of people getting after it. And I believe everything starts at the local level. That's where the change is seeded, and then we have to do everything we can as states to clear the brush out of the way so people can drive and move. So just very, very quickly on Indiana GPS, Indiana graduates prepared to succeed. Our team came in a time.
What's the URL for that? Can you just
IndianaGPS.com.
Check it out.
Check it out. But we actually, when we came in as a team, and this should give a lot of people hope in the room, we came in at a time where Indiana was really battling in education. The department was battling with the state board, with the House, the Senate, the governor. That was our headline. The governor asked stop the arguing and drive real change for kids. So we started by asking Hoosiers, that's what we call ourselves in Indiana. We started by asking Hoosiers, what
is a Hoosier anyway?
Don't ask me that. That was not a part of the preparation. Google it later.
All right.
But we started with asking Hoosiers what really matters for all kids, regardless of where they live in the state, regardless of anything. What matters most? The key that came out formed our portrait of a graduate, which academic mastery, reading and STEM, college and career readiness, including credentials of value and experiences like work-based learning. And then it's shifted to skills. I heard several of you mention that in your comments. Communication and collaboration, work ethic, civic, financial, and digital literacy. So if that's what Indiana cares about, then how might we systematically really change what we're doing and make that happen, drive that forward? So that's what caused the launch of IndianaGPS.com, which you should go to it. It connects all of our longitudinal data from the Department of Ed, K-12, to our higher education, to our workforce data, longitudinally. And then we're leveraging these key characteristics, which include knowledge and skills, to totally drive exactly what we're doing. So we're not only measuring, but then we're also clearing the brush so that our schools that are in the room and some who are not present can actually really make sure our students are ready to succeed upon graduation.
You have a really good state board. You're appointed, right?
I'm appointed by the governor.
And you work with a really good state board.
One who is in the room, stand up, Scott Bass.
That includes people like Scott Bass.
Stand up, Scott Bass, come on.
Scott, you can describe it. You guys voted on a new graduation pathway. Give us the 60-second on how that's going to improve GPS.
Yeah, so part of the diploma in a high school drives all of the behavior. And so what we did with Dr. Jenner's leadership is say, look, can we redesign the diploma to give schools and students maximum flexibility without it just being a checklist of courses and credits, but make sure there's foundational skills and then open up, especially that last 2 years of high school, for these kind of career explorations.
Awesome. And it's a pathway that's going to value work-based learning, client-connected projects like you do at Purdue Polytech. It'll promote credentialing. So that's really exciting.
It's exciting time.
You're in the middle of a public comment on that?
Yes, sir. We have 2 public comment periods. Anyone in the nation can comment on Indiana, but available right now. And then in May, we'll close that first one down, Tom, and really, really finesse the rule, the new diploma rule, which is very disruptive to K-12 in Indiana and the nation. And then launch the second public comment period in June, July, and then the State Board of Ed will be set to affirm Indiana's new graduation requirements in August or September.
This is the only session you're going to go to. You get scrolling pictures of kids, by the way. A bunch of these are Tacoma kids. You just saw some in a maritime pathway, thanks to Josh's work in Tacoma. Also didn't mention our sponsor for this session is ASA, the country's leading advocate for career exploration. Starting when? Michael, stand up. What does career exploration Utopia look like for you at ASA?
Starting in middle school, introducing kids to career exploration earlier on, so they have a chance to test and try earlier.
Where could they go if parents wanted, or friends or teachers wanted to find really good career exploration resources online?
Check out asa.org. We also have a bunch of free digital platforms for teens called Evolve Me is our biggest one. We just launched that one last year. We also have Futurescape and Next Voice.
Thank you. There's some really cool middle grade career exploration stuff happening in North Carolina, thanks to Kristie Vanauken. Kristie, what's going on in North Carolina?
Thanks, Tom. So before I get started, I have got to give a shout out to our state superintendent, Catherine Truitt, sitting right over there. Give us a shout. Woot, 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 woot. So she
did a really good session yesterday. Thank you. You were over at the air show. Thank you. Talking about AI leadership. So thank you. We appreciate your leadership. Thank you. North Carolina in the house. Thank you.
So we've been very blessed to have an incredibly strong team that's really focused on the post-secondary plan of a student's choice, right? So that's been the mantra that the superintendent has charged us all with, making sure that the graduation stage isn't the starting line, but the finishing line, but the starting line for students. And so what does that look like in practice? So for us, it looks like career development planning that isn't just a check the box, right? So raise your hand if your state has some kind of career academic planning mechanism. Yeah, probably a good number of you. How many of them would you consider to be mostly a check the box exercise? Right? So we have this unique opportunity right now as legislation was just passed in North Carolina where we can bring partners together with the school districts that are piloting the development plan and really start to think about what does that student-centered ecosystem look like? What does it look like with the student at the center and all of these groups, like thinking about like United Way, thinking about Gear Up and college advising corps. It doesn't really matter to us. Even the military has amazing resources for career-connected education. So we just need to deliver it in a way that really makes sense to the student. We need to give them agency to lift up what they want to do, what they want to experience. And what we learned from the ASA research was that students want more voice, right? Yet we come up with all these grown-up solutions for them. Ugh, right? They don't want that. So how do we create a system where the student is truly at the center? We're going to bring partners together so that we can map that out. It's not easy. It's very easy to just do the thing and get the legislation. Much easier than I thought, actually. But the hard part is the implementation and to be sure that that career journey isn't just in words, but is actually in action. So that's one of the things. We're also very committed to the North Carolina Portrait of a Graduate. Dr. Renner just spoke about the Indiana portrait. We're working together collaboratively on a very cool new way to not only define what those durable skills look like. Thank you, America Succeeds, for your leadership there. But also thinking about how do we measure it? And how does the student know that they're developing these skills? Right? And how does a teacher know when the student is developing those skills if all we're concerned about is high stakes testing in biology in 10th grade? So knowing all of these kind of anchor tenets has led us to a place where now we're using that portrait of a graduate to really redefine what matters. It's durable skills, it's technical skills, and it's also academic learning.
So one of my favorite things about North Carolina is Spark NC. It's a super cool collaborative of 15, now 16? Stand up, Lynn. Dr. Lynn Moody is leading this effort so 17 districts are working together, some big, some really small, to stand up next-gen pathways in a really cool way.
Yeah, we have 17 new Spark Labs that launched in July. We probably have at least 50 other school districts who are asking for a Spark Lab for next year. So we're looking at scale pretty rapidly. We have 80 learning units inside a platform, but
and they're like modular units that stack into courses that stack into pathways, right?
Correct.
And it's so cool because it offers lots of flexibility on how you deliver a new pathway depending on whether you can staff it or you can't staff it. So teacher in the room or teacher at a distance or async.
And students can come in during lunch, they can come in during independent study, they can take it like a course, they can take it like a club. They run the syllabus.
This is such a cool statewide. What would you add to that? You gotta love what they're doing.
Oh, yeah. Well, so we love leveraging cool partnerships like Spark NC, but really it's got to start with the student in our schools and with those partners and with employers, don't you think? I mean, I think that the employer connectivity, they have to also see the value in things like work-based learning.
Yeah.
It has to work for them and for the student.
Katie, what do you like about what they're doing in North Carolina? Anything you want to comment on or anything you're doing better than they're doing in North Carolina?
Tom. No, I mean, I think one thing that we have to acknowledge is that every state, if you look at state dynamics, every state has a different path to drive change. Yep. We're all unique. And I'm looking at Catherine because we've talked specifically about some of that dynamic in North Carolina. Talked to many of your other state leaders as well, and what's possible and what's not. In Indiana, and why we're driving so quickly is because the synergy's there with our governor, our House, our Speaker of the House is at this conference. We sat for a long time yesterday at the Cheesecake Factory. He ate nachos, I drank coffee, and we just like ideated and planned. Our Senate has been with us. And then most importantly, as I shared, our local communities, the educators in the room, the business and industry, that synergy is what's driving the momentum in Indiana completely.
North Carolina can top that because their Senator Lee came, the sponsor of Spark NC, and
Is
tonight.
this like a competition? Are you going to put us on a line?
It's not a competition.
tonight-
There's lots of good work happening across the country. We're very lucky.
Tonight, Senator Lee is pitching Spark NC right at the innovation competition. So
Well, I would argue too that, I mean, we learn from Indiana. We collaborate all the time. We're both part of this major effort to measuring durable skills. So it's really not a competition. To us, it's about raising the bar for all students and all kiddos across the country.
that's awesome. All right, meet Gary Hoachlander. One of the most important developments in America in career exploration has been linked learning. Started here in California 15 years ago, and it's now turned into a national movement sponsored by Link Learning and Gary's Connect Ed. We in Kansas City, we've had the chance to watch Gary's team help a number of districts stand up really great career academies. So Gary, tell us about Connect Ed and Link Learning and the work you're doing across the country.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom, and good afternoon, everybody. So at Connect Ed, we like to celebrate student work. And at the end of the school year, we bring together students, teachers, parents, employers from all over our network to share what students have been doing during the year. A couple of years ago, we had a convening down here in Long Beach. There were a group of students from the Digital Media Arts pathway at Hollywood High School, just up the road a little bit. They had been charged in their second semester with developing a 2-minute video trailer to pitch a full-length documentary to executives in Hollywood. And there was a group of 4 students. They had chosen to develop a documentary on the history of segregation in Los Angeles. And so in their English class, they wrote the script for their video. They also read and analyzed and discussed The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. And in their social studies class, they read and they discussed Brown versus Board of Education and the Kerner Commission report on civil disorder in 1968. And in their math class, they learned how to calculate a mean and a standard deviation so they could determine whether quantitative measures among different subgroups were statistically significant. And in their physics class, they learned the properties of light and how lenses work and function in cameras. And in their CTE class, their Career and Technical Education class, their videography class, they learned how to develop a storyboard, how to use a camera, how to edit, and how to put all of that together into this 2-minute trailer that was playing right in front of us. And I looked at it and it was terrific. And I asked them, I said, well, to whom did you get to pitch this? And they said, oh, we got to pitch it to the vice president of MTV. I thought, whoa. I said, well, what was the most important thing that he had to tell you? And they looked at me, they didn't miss a beat, and they said, he told us, spelling matters. And like you, the teachers laughed, and they said, you know, we tell them that all the time. But until they heard that from the vice president of MTV, they didn't really believe us. So I use that as an example of a couple of things. That's my slice, anyway, of utopia, of what learning and teaching could look like in schools, but it also illustrates how to think about a pathway. Pathways means lots of different things to lots of different folks. And at Connect Ed, it means a comprehensive program of study. It's not just career and technical education, which is incredibly important, but it's a cluster, it's core academics, math, science, English, social studies, taught differently, that's the hard part, integrated with career and technical education, surrounded by a continuum of work-based learning, and supported by personalized student supports.
Gary, I love that you centered on work that matters for students, right? Doing difficult things that they're interested in, that's linked to the community. And I love that you talked about performance feedback, because sometimes it's that tough feedback. Alyssa, we talked about this. Alyssa's standing up this very cool student digital marketing agency around the National CAPS network. And Alyssa and I and the board had this conversation about performance feedback and how valuable that is, but how difficult it is the first time a student delivers work, right? You guys do this at Purdue Polytech, the first time they deliver something to a client and they get puked on because it's not good enough, right? That first experience of getting tough feedback is so valuable, and it can be difficult, but it can be life-changing. It's the kind of experiences that kids will remember for 20 or 30 years. Hillary, you have kids do this at St. Brain. You have a bunch of kids doing community-connected projects after school and getting paid, right?
Yeah, several hundred at our last count at our innovation center. Yeah, they work with clients in the real world.
Some are in district, but some are in the community, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely, all over the community. Yep, they build a scope of work, they do project management, they hire and fire one another, which can get interesting, and yeah, it's great. Feedback, right? Yeah, they do.
All right, Gary, I want to come back, and we're going to talk about the rural challenge. I'm going to invite our state chiefs to think about that as well. How can we do career pathways in rural areas? We'll come back, but I want to bring this to Josh Garcia. Dr. Josh Garcia is superintendent in Tacoma, Washington. I've had the good fortune of knowing Josh for 25 years. I actually take full credit for hiring him. He was my daughter's high school principal. He's gone on to do extraordinary work in Tacoma, developing pathways. His sidekick, Adam Koulas, is now developing a maritime career center that is super cool for us in the region. Dr. Garcia, what does career exploration look like in Tacoma?
Wow, I'm having a little out-of-body experience because I'm sitting here thinking to myself, you know, we are in this luxury, right? And it really comes down to experiences, and then I'll go in there. So I think we have to be careful about figuring out the experiences that we are manufacturing and believing that's all in there. Tacoma is a poor community. We have about 28,000 kids. 140 different languages, 100 different Indian tribes. I spend most of my time learning about the experiences that are not good in our kids' lives. I had 10 kids shot last year. Kids are raped, human trafficking, you name it. So what we decide to do together collectively in these moments actually makes a difference to create and manufacture experiences. And it can't just be a one-off. So in Tacoma, we've tried to create an ecosystem, and I'll just go really fast for you. Total, functional, continuous, right? Total, every kid has to have access and intentional viewpoints, even at your elementary schools with your after-school programs and high school kids working with them in paid job experiences, right? And some of you guys do this in there. It has to be functional. You can have a great idea, but if there's no business plan, it's just a great idea. Or maybe not. It's just an idea. And it has to be a continuous. We talk about things in decades for systemic change. So what we've done is we've created a portfolio approach. All of our comprehensive high schools, all of our students have to have industrial certifications. They have to have a verified acceptance letter into the next institution. That's a 2-year, a 4-year, a military, or apprenticeship program. It's not a job. It's actually that recognizes learning has to keep on going. All kids have to take a college level class. We measure how many kids have paid job experience and how many kids are in extracurricular activities, right? So nobody's sitting around just looking at one class anymore. You're moving on there. We offer a portfolio of thematic-based opportunities. We have a school in the zoo. I have a jail school, right? And folks go, oh, you mean like where they check in? No, like where there are kids on trial for murder and convicted. And we bring technology to them so they can take classes like AP Physics. Why? Because at some point they're going to get out and we want them to be career ready. So every kid in there. We have other opportunities. Adam stood up an online school for 5,000 kids in 3 months during the pandemic, and we've kept it going. Our high schools have turned into hybrid opportunities as we go forward. Jobs 253 is our program where we pay kids to build work stamina. 253 is our area code, right? So they have.
Is it summer work or mostly summer, some after school?
It's all year, after school, summer, right? And we give kids high school credit. And in order to get that paycheck from the city of Tacoma, which is your W-2 where you're building your resume, you have to participate in financial literacy. We have to continue to incentivize these opportunities in that space. We have pathways within the schools, medical academies, automotive opportunities. What I think is really important though is, and I'll leave it at this, is we make all this shit up. And we control none of it. So if you come in as a recovering high school principal, I can say to you, if you embrace the fact that, hey, we're not gonna control this, but the high is that we can actually make up something that's better for kids and we can try to influence it, then I think there's opportunities to do that. So I can go into the data, I can pull in different programs. Most importantly, though, you could just look at kids' faces on our screens right here off to the left of it, not look at me, and say, yeah, there's a lot of moments. As a composer, life happens between two music notes. Be a composer. Create the song, not the lyric.
Josh, we love the maritime pathways that you're working on. That's super relevant to your community. Just talk about that journey in creating that new center.
Yeah, so Port of Tacoma, International Port, big port, deep water port, Maritime Skills Center. I was naive. I thought it would be very easy. I could go to industry and I could say, hey, give me the list of skills that kids need in order to get longshoreman jobs, take on the cranes, work in trucking, and the room just kept on being silent for year after year after year. Because reality is there's not a set published set of skills for some of our careers.
These kids fed us when we were at the conference last year.
And so we built a Port Skills Center in partnership on port land with the Port of Tacoma, where kids will actually coexist with port officials working in tide flat certifications opportunities.
Gene Eddy's president of ASA. Gene, stand up a second, and just you had the chance to visit with Josh and his team. When was that, November or something? What would you appreciate about what you saw in terms of career exploration in Tacoma?
I have to say I was beyond moved at everything I saw in Tacoma. To be able to see how school systems are adapting to the kind of change we need is just beyond thrilling and absolutely powering.
Adam, make sure Jean gets her gift card.
All right. So we've talked about 2 states and a national network. How many schools have you worked with? 100?
Oh, easily. We've worked now in up to 15 states with probably several hundred schools.
Josh talked about some of the particular urban challenges, but there's a lot of urban opportunities, given that it's rich with high-wage employment. Gary, what are some of the particular challenges of trying to do this in a really rural setting? How can you create multiple pathways when there aren't many business partners, when staffing a high-tech pathway might be hard? Give us some examples there.
Yeah, so until about 4 or 5 years ago, all of ConnectEd's work was in basically large urban districts. The California Linked Learning District Initiative, 9 large districts here in California. 5 years ago, we began working in Gallup, New Mexico. Those of you who know Gallup, it's on Route 66. It's the southeast corner of the Navajo Reservation. There are 8 high schools in Gallup. 2 are relatively medium-sized comprehensive high schools in Gallup, but 6 of them are very small, geographically isolated schools. I'm talking about Sagai High School with 75 kids, 2 hours northeast of Gallup, which isn't very big to start with, where the only employer is the school. And so how do you do this work under those kinds of conditions? We don't claim for a minute to have all the answers. One of the key strategies, I believe, is proving to be entrepreneurship.
Yes.
And really introducing that into these very small learning communities so that you're not dependent on a particular theme.
Also, school district as partner, right? Leveraging every department, culinary, transportation, back office, so.
Absolutely.
Right, that they're all involved in internships.
Well, and you know, we put so much emphasis on developing work-based learning opportunities for students with other employers when the school and the school district can provide a lot of these opportunities. So yes, there are lots of strategies. We produced some papers on this. Be happy to share them with all of you. It's not easy.
Corey, CAPS Network got a grant from the feds last fall to work with 10 or 12 rural communities in Kansas. How's that going? Are you optimistic that you can bring real-world learning to rural communities in Kansas?
Yeah, absolutely. Got funding support from the U.S. Department of Ed. We're going to have a cohort starting with 5 or 6 communities in Kansas in year 1, adding half dozen the next 2 years, but building a cohort that can support each other and then leveraging some of the virtual opportunities like the media agencies that you mentioned.
So that's very cool. So standing up a national media agency, and some kids will be able to do virtual client projects, virtual internships, connected to national opportunities.
So Tom, I'd love to be able to go to a place where there were those virtual learnings that they were recognized by each state as, you know, I was sitting in your session around the Carnegie Hall, right? One of our biggest accomplishments, we've developed policy that recognizes learning happens outside the classroom out day for our high school and middle school kids so they can earn credits.
Yeah.
But that's how we should be leveraging, not only using urban settings to help rural communities, but back and forth. But state agencies need to come together to say, hey, this credit doesn't matter if it's from Indiana or North Carolina. If I'm taking that virtually and I can demonstrate that I have that learning, why can't that transfer over to Washington? We need to start to make those learning opportunities more portable for our kids.
You're doing a lot of that inside, yeah. You're doing a bunch of that, Adam's doing a bunch of that statewide, right? Where you're creating virtual opportunities. But
we're trying to, Tacoma will at some point probably take over the West Coast for student enrollment, at least partially.
Katie, the rural challenge, how do you see rural communities fitting in here?
You know, some actually just had to leave for another convening, but some of our shining stars in this space are in rural Indiana. One particular example that comes to mind is Perry Central, and again, this is one of many that I could name. Perry Central is right kind of in the middle of the Hoosier National Forest in southern Indiana, rural as you can get, no stoplights. And so their leaders as a state, in terms of what can the state do, I think part of that is empower leaders to try something different and make that the expectation. We're pointing out bold folks and celebrating their work, but in Perry Central, because they're not around anything and they want their students to experience, every single Wednesday, all of their seniors go to work-based learning. Some go to Vanderburgh County, some go to, and you all don't know all the counties, so imagine, some go to the next neighboring town, the next neighboring county, depending on what their interest is. And then in Indiana, we just launched, because many of you are probably in your mind like, well, but some students have transportation barriers. Yes. So in Indiana, we just strategically launched the nation's first CSA, which is a career scholarship account. It's in its infancy, so it's brand new, but it allows in Indiana every sophomore, junior, and senior to have access to up to $5,000 to remove barriers to quality work-based learning, transportation, anything you might need, or credentials of value that they may complete. So think dual enrollment that their school might not have. And again, that's in its infancy.
That would stack on their regular ADA. It's not.
Yes, sir.
That's super awesome.
Yes, sir.
I love that. What's it called?
CSA, Career Scholarship Account.
Wow. What a cool idea.
It's comparable if you think about ESA. It's comparable to that methodology in school choice, but it's specifically for careers, and it's accessible to all school types.
Anybody from Eastern Hancock County?
He just left. Well, no,
they have a joy pathway where they're trying to connect kids with joyful learning. So
He didn't leave because it was boring, by the way. You really did have something to do.
I
just need you to know that. They told me before.
It's a very cool example of a very small district that is using place-based learning strategies, connect. Dave, you would say Project Lead the Way is part of the rural solution, right? You got to have 5,000 super rural schools, and you're working hard to make that super engaging, yeah? Anything you want to say about the rural challenge?
Do you trust me? So urban, rural, suburban, big school, small school, public school, private school, we want to serve students wherever they are and be a good partner to districts. But another good example in Indiana is Washington High School, and they work with Trained Naval Surface Warfare, the largest inland naval base in the country. They work with local hospitals, healthcare everywhere, just to help kids get out of school experiences that are really powerful and meaningful to them.
So in North Carolina, Spark NC is working with half of those districts are rural. Anything else you want to add about the rural challenge and career exploration?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I'm thinking about our charter school network, and we have a lot of very good charter schools in North Carolina in our rural communities, and they are much more experimental and much more career aligned. So I'm thinking about one in Elizabeth City, for example, that works 80% of their students have work-based learning experiences with the defense industry, which is located in that area, very close on the border with Virginia. So there's a lot of opportunities for students in North Carolina in our public school system to get that kind of, and also leaning into the entrepreneurship. There are a lot of opportunities, but it is a wicked problem and continues to be one I think that we're all going to have to continue to dig into.
I'm going to ask them about AI and what the heck that means for careers and career education, unless y'all have a burning question that you want to jump in with. We'll start anywhere anybody who has passion about this. What does AI mean for career exploration? When and how should we be introducing digital literacy? Should AI enter the conversation about career exploration?
Day one.
Start early?
Yeah, 100%. So as we think about this, I mean, we can't run away from AI. It's here right now. And so coming up with important guidance and guidelines for schools to use AI intelligently, for us to work with it rather than against it and to think it's going to just go away. Probably not a strong strategy. So, and I do see things like virtual learning. So we had these summer career accelerators. We invested about $35 million last year across the state. 45,000 students in summer career accelerators, and many of them with the VR headsets, doing different kinds of career experiences.
Anybody go to Cajon Valley yesterday? Right, that's probably, I think it's the best K-8 career exploration in the world. I think they're starting that conversation about AI early with kids. Anybody hear about that yesterday or not? Was that part of the dialogue? They're certainly doing it at, did you go to Bostonia when you were on the trip? So Bostonia is the new high school that they're creating, and it's a good early example of a pathway for every learner. And so they are using a set of AI tools to help customize pathways for every single learner. I think that's an interesting part of our future. Katie, what does AI fit in?
I think with AI, we have to be really, really careful as leaders not to just blanket that it's going to solve the problem, all the problems, right? We have to be very specific about what problems we are trying to solve when we invest in AI. In Indiana, we invested $2 million and right now are running, you might have heard Conmigo talk through this, but $2 million to work with schools who opted in throughout the state. It's about 45,000 students. We have 1.12 million in the state. So about 45,000 students, and we're trying to, the two problem statements we sought to solve is how might we reduce teacher workload so they can focus on some intentional areas, some of which, Tom, is having one-on-one conversations with students about their hopes and dreams, which that people side will always be important.
Thank you.
The second problem statement was how might we increase student tutoring one-on-one? We're looking at future problem statements, including looking at our counselor workload and leveraging AI. We're looking at AI. I would say that is the next. And then the other piece that correlates is middle school career exploration. How might we leverage AI, do career aptitude assessment for all students, and then also connect them to what their future graduation path might be. So there's a ton of opportunity, but we can't just use all AI for all the things. We've got to be very, very focused.
Josh, you having a conversation about what AI means and any intersection with career ed, career exploration?
Oh, yeah, it goes something like this, is get over it. The kids already run it. There are already things, like it makes me chuckle, right? Because I feel that fear like, oh my gosh, we should be doing something. And all you got to do is just jump online and get going in that space. And so just, if you're uncomfortable with it, just start building it. Kids are using it. I have 3 kids, right? One starts a new company every week, right? Starts a new company every week, and that's part of it. And so kids are already using this. Educators aren't going to stop it. We can influence it, right, for the good, but try not to hold it back at all. It's just happening. And the more you feel like you are doing something to restrict it or control it, outthink it, right? So now I don't need a kid to write a paper anymore. I need you to do the performance-based. Now I'm moving into performance-based really quickly. You still got to use AI to write the paper, but now move into performance-based. Let's now have the one-to-one conversation and do assessment differently in that space so that you can see if they can do it on the demand.
Awesome examples. Thanks again to ASA for sponsoring this session. Katie Jenner, Indiana, Kristie Vanauken, North Carolina, Gary Hoachlander from Connect Ed, and Josh Garcia from Tacoma. Give them a hand.